going on, people? I am the ADHD gardener, where I use gardening, houseplants, and humor as a form of mental health therapy, and it is all about container gardening today. There are a lot of people that live in apartment settings, or maybe they have such a small backyard that, using the ground is not really a feasible idea. Another reason you would use containers is because you have poor soil. Like, man, sometimes amending soil can take years. And what if you don't have that time just to get started? Containers is where it's at. What would you use for these containers? Basically anything that you can use that holds soil. You can go to the nurseries and garden centers and buy regular containers, but maybe you want to go a little unconventional, and I know I go unconventional all the time. I've even used plastic water bottles as containers. Anything that can hold soil is a viable option for a container. Now, whether these containers have BPA, that's a whole nother story. But for now, we're just going to get into what kind of containers you can use. Now, these grow pots, they came with a plant. So I saved the containers, and then you can use them multiple times again. I have a video right here I'm going to show you of my dad's house where he's using all different kind of containers. I've used storage bins. I've used cat litter boxes. I've used, of course, plastic bottles. I've used wine bottles, glass bottles. Anything that really can hold dirt is what you can use for a container. Now, what is BPA? You hear BPA-free plastic. It's a chemical. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let me know down in the comments below. But it's a chemical that is used into making some plastics. Now, they do say that BPA can seep out of the plastic into your water or into your soil in your containers. That is why a lot of people use BPA-free plastic. Now, I'm all for BPA free, but let's get real. Some people just don't have the money option to be able to buy a lot of these BPA free containers. So I'm just throwing it out there. Now that you have your container, are these going to be outdoors or indoors? Now, depending on that answer is the kind of soil that you're going to be getting. Indoor potting soil is recommended for indoors. Now, that kind of soil has a lot more peat moss, and that tends to hold on to a lot of moisture. If you want to go outdoors, then you would buy the outdoor potting mix. See, all these containers, these are outdoors, right? But I use indoor potting mix for this. Indoor potting mix for outdoors is not that terrible. I guess it depends on the type or brand of indoor potting mix you're using. But I would not use outdoor potting mix for inside. That's just something I wouldn't do. You want your soil to be able to drain freely with no problems. They don't like to sit in a moist or damp environment. Some plants do like that, but you have to make sure that is the plant that meets that requirement. Most of the time, you don't need that much wet or moist soil. So, and a lot of these containers do not have drainage at all. These two pots right here do not have any drainage holes. So I have to be very, very careful as to how much I'm watering. Now, if you're using a container that has no drainage, may I recommend charcoal. These two containers, they have charcoal on the bottom as a base. Not only is the charcoal going to be giving an amount of space from the soil to the water, it kind of absorbs smells. Just don't dump a boatload of water in there. But this is what you would use if you don't have a container that has drainage holes. Charcoal, your best friend. Now, if you don't want to risk the whole water thing with the no drainage hole pots, that's okay. You can use succulents, you can use cacti that don't require a lot of watering. You can use them in these containers. But if you do want to risk the ones that need the water, charcoal. Now, we have peat moss here. Just keep in mind, not all plants require the same kind of soil medium. Some plants do love moisture. Some plants hate moisture. Remember, cacti, succulents versus maybe, let's say, some nepenthes. They like a moist loving. Cacti hate being moist. It all depends. So you would not use peat moss when it comes to your succulents or cacti because this holds on to water. I don't use peat moss all the time. It just depends on the plant, but I like to have it handy. The next one is perlite. I love perlite so much. Have you ever looked into the soil of your plants and whatnot and you see these little white specks inside of the dirt? That's what perlite is. It's all natural. It comes from something crushed. I don't really remember what it is, but you can Google it if you want to. But this kind of perlite, this promotes drainage. So if you notice that the soil that you bought at the store holds on to a lot of moisture, it doesn't drain as easily as it would, then you would add perlite. The reason why a lot of these indoor potting soils hold on and retain a lot of moisture, and you will notice that through trial and error, you'll find that out the hard way, unfortunately, based on the different brands that you buy. A lot of them are peat moss heavy. which means they retain a lot of moisture, which cannot be really good for a lot of these plants. So just keep that in mind. And that is why we can counter that with perlite. The perlite, the charcoal, the peat moss, all these things are add-ons to the soil that you are going to buy in the store. Another thing when it comes to drainage, now, yes, you can have some pots that have no drainage. You could have some pots that have one hole only. Now, I've noticed in all my years that one hole drainage pots are not the best. This one, for example, only has one main one in the center. Now, what happens at times when you have a container that only has one drainage hole, yes, it's nice that it has a drainage hole, but it's not enough to release all that excess moisture. So if you just wanted to check out what the bottom of your plant looked like, wow, it would be soaked up on the bottom right by the drainage hole area because there's only one hole. I know that sounds so funny, but it's true. It only has one drainage hole. So a lot of the times that one hole is not enough to drain properly. So if you have a plastic container, I can't lift that one up. But let's say you have a plastic container that's easily breakable, that easily snaps or anything like that. You can poke drill holes, stab holes, whatever you want to do on the bottom of it to create more drainage. Plastic pots only. You can drill holes. I've drilled holes numerous times in my videos before in case you haven't seen them. I just found some more because I use all kind of containers. Now another type of container are these like grow bags. That's what they call them, they're grow bags. It's a special kind of material that is breathable. Water does come out, it does drain out like slowly. However, if you were to put this on the ground or on some sort of piece of wood, it's not going to properly drain, so you have to like kind of get it up off the ground. Now remember I was talking about no drainage? Look, we can also use wood, but as you can see, this has no drainage holes. So what you can do is drill multiple holes. One hole is not enough. I find that one hole is just not enough in the bottom of this to make a good drainage container. So I would suggest maybe at least 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has to have a lot of drainage holes. Now this is wood, so eventually the wood could mess up, but this will take a while. But line this inside of it with a landscape fabric if you don't want to really mess up the wood, but I think eventually you would. Another thing you can do in case you don't want to mess this up, you could just find a container that fits inside of this and you could just leave it right in here just for looks, you know. As you see here, this is a clay-based soil. Now this is a perfect example of what not to do. This soil right here is extremely dry. This is a very clay-based, so as you can see, it is hardened up when it is dry, and I'm not feeling that at all. So what I would need to do is to repot this all over again, mixing it up and amending the soil just to soften it up. These I did pretty good. This is dry though, but that's because the sun is beaming and I have to cover the pot. When using containers outdoors, the soil tends to dry out a lot faster. So you could cover the top layer of soil with something else like mulch or hay even. That works. I hope you found this video helpful and then you got to know a little bit about container gardening and where to start. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to smash that like button. I really appreciate it. It really helps me out. It lets YouTube know that you really enjoy my videos. Also, if you want to see more content like this on gardening, houseplants, and humor as a form of mental health therapy, then consider subscribing. I drop a video every week and then some in between. You can catch me on Facebook and Instagram, but I'm on Facebook every day. I show a lot of ins and outs of my life, memes, and a lot of side projects. Until the next episode, peace and love.